Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. You are radically welcome here at Girl Trek. My name is Morgan Dixon, one of the co-founders of Girl Trek. I am joined on the line by my girl Vanessa. Say hi, Z.
Hey, everybody.
And this is day 2 of Black History Bootcamp. Welcome to Girl Trek, the 21-day journey where we explore the stories that give us a blueprint for joy and justice. And today we are going to be talking about no one other than one of the most important figures in all of Black history, Paul Robeson. And today we're going to add to this story Islanda Robeson, who's his wife. So we're excited to talk about that today. I started with a song from Tracy Chapman because I was completely overwhelmed. It's Tuesday, November 5th, 2024, the day that will live in infamy when Donald Trump and Kamala Harris are running for the president of the United States and everyone is voting. And I made the mistake of going on Instagram and I got completely overwhelmed. I got completely overwhelmed. How you feeling over there, V?
I am, you know what? I'm feeling inspired right now, Morgan. I actually got several messages from trekkers across the country with random different perspectives, but each one of them saying, can you feel it in the air? We are walking in the footsteps and today is the day. Like 3 different trekkers said that, including Michelle in Seattle, who posted in this private group chat of the Facebook trekkers out there. And I was just like, yeah, I have to feel that. So I'm feeling just like we are walking in the footsteps of something powerful right now. And I am feeling like regardless of the outcomes of this election, that Black women are caring for ourselves and that we have to just believe tomorrow is going to be a better day for us. I have to believe in Morgan.
Great. Well, if you are overwhelmed like me, or if you're feeling inspired by Vanessa, you are welcome here. Your opinions, your feelings, you can bring your full self to Girl Trek. So for people who are new, Girl Trek is an international organization. We are the largest organization in the United States of America for Black women that is focused on health. We are 1.3 million women who are walking in the footsteps of the civil rights legacy. We have spent the last 10 weeks preparing for this election, exploring the issues that, can you put your phone on mute? Exploring the issues that face our community, everything from mass incarceration to domestic violence, to everything in between, food justice, and just general civic engagement, and how we can rally, how we can organize in order to show up. And showing up is what we do best as Black women. And so today's conversation was a little bit tricky for me.
Morgan, can I jump in right there and just shout out, because I'm getting ready to walk to the polls and I'm getting ready to soup up my neighbors. I just want to shout out all of the women in the movement right now who are on this actual day, like actually walking somebody to the polls or walking themselves to the polls, or just out there holding space for our neighborhoods and our communities right now. I was just thinking about them right when you said that.
So about 1,000, thank you, Dee, about 1,000 women signed up to lead walks to the polls a couple of weeks ago, and we're doing a parade to the polls. So some of y'all driving and then parking and then walking, that's all right. Listen, ain't nobody judging. We're trying to get there, get the vote. If you voted early, thank you. If you are waiting in line listening to this right now, thank you. If you are going to vote later, thank you. Know that most polling places close at 7 o'clock, like the doors close at 7 o'clock, so you definitely need to be in line by now. If you are on the East Coast and if you are on the West Coast, you have some time, but make sure that you carve out some time to vote today and do your civic duty. Voting is our civic duty. We understand that. We understand the responsibility that comes from our foremothers who fought and died to vote. People was posting pictures of Fannie Lou Hamer, sick and tired of being sick and tired. I was like, okay, we got it, y'all. We're out here. Girl Trek has been out here for 10 weeks. You guys have been going door to door. You've been organizing. You've been getting 10 to win, 10 of your friends to come and vote with you. You've been leading walks to the polls. We have done the work. And so I just want to celebrate you for doing the work. And I want to highlight that Vanessa said yesterday that she got off social media because I don't remember your words, but that it felt like kind of verbose inspiration or something that didn't feel authentic. What did you say?
Yeah, prescriptive, or just, I don't know what my exact words are, but it feels like it's all directing me towards one thought pattern.
Exactly. And that's what I want to try and disrupt on today's conversation. And the reason I want to disrupt it is because I actually think that regardless of the outcomes of the election, and I do think that there is a direction that helps Black women live longer and easier. And I hope that from the 10 weeks of instruction and learning and public health education that we've given, you too are going to vote in the interest of Black women. I really hope that's the case. And I welcome if it isn't, because I think that's what a democracy is about, that we all get a vote and we get to have power in our vote. And so I was just thinking, I was like, what do I want to talk about today on a day that is overwhelmingly focused on getting the vote out? That is overwhelmingly focused on bipartisanship. And if you haven't made your decision by now, like I don't want to spend another conversation on it, honestly. Like, we have spent 10 weeks asking people to vote. So please get out there and vote. I want to talk about what happens next. I want to talk about how we organize, and I want to talk about what we organize for. And so the question prompt for today was, are we going to be radical or are we going to be responsible? Are we going to be radical or are we going to be responsible? And it is a moral dichotomy that oftentimes is at heads with one another, but doesn't have to be. So we want to talk about the opportunity of and in this situation. But I wanted to bring in the story of Paul Robeson. For those of you who don't know Paul,
opportunity of and, underscoring.
Yes. I want to bring in the story of Paul Robeson, and I want to tell you that for those of you who are new to Black History Bootcamp, it's a 21-day walking meditation where we learn from our foremothers and our forefathers a blueprint for revolution. And so Paul Robeson is someone who we all know his name, but a lot of us don't know a ton about his life. I didn't know a ton about his life. I knew I loved him, but I didn't know why. I knew I was supposed to love him. I didn't know why. I knew he was a great figure in the Harlem Renaissance. I knew that he was one of like the greats. You know, you have Langston Hughes, you have Paul Robeson, you have Zora Neale Hurston, you have, the kind of greats in the Harlem Renaissance. So Paul Robeson was one of them. I knew he was an athlete. I knew he played in the NFL. Did you know that, Vanessa?
I didn't know really anything except I think he was cute. Literally, that's all I knew. I didn't know. No.
Yes, he was not only cute, he was absolutely fine. And it was just like he and his wife are so beautiful together. And so he was an athlete. He was all-star or all-American athlete in football. I'm sorry, my neighbors are loud. He was, and he was, he was an athlete. He was an all-American in football. He drafted to the NFL. He was in law school. First, he started law school at NYU. He didn't think that was for him. He moved to law school at Columbia Law School up at Harlem. So he was in law school when he got drafted.
The most important part of this story that I'm understanding, Morgan, is the timeline. Because when I personally think of Paul Robeson, I'm thinking of like the 1800s. Well, what you're saying is, I'm not even kidding. Like, sometimes I don't think we even understand the history right now. I just thought his story somehow was like earlier on. I didn't even understand the context of it being such a modern story.
Oh, it was early on. So he was born in 1898. He was born in 1898.
He was born in 1898 and he played in the NFL?
Yeah, the NFL was in the 30s, in 20s and 30s.
Okay.
Yeah. So he was born in 1898. And he was born to, I'll tell you a little bit about his family in a second, but I just was trying to do a quick intro so that I could cue up his voice. So he essentially was an athlete. NFL, he was a scholar. He was an academic. He was valedictorian of his college at Rutgers. He was the first Black person, or he was the only Black person at Rutgers when he went. In fact, when he tried out for the football team at Rutgers, they beat him so bad that they dislocated his shoulder and broke his nose during football practice. And the coach was like, I guess you made it on the team. He made it on the team and he became All-American. His own teammates beat him down because he was the only Black person. After just a few years there, he was on the cover of Crisis magazine, which is W.B. Du Bois's magazine, at 19 years old because he was a phenom. His all-white all the students, his colleagues at school, voted him valedictorian. He was just incredible. He was also in the Glee Club, but he couldn't be in the Glee Club because the Glee Club was social then, and he had to go to all these kind of white, swanky events, and they wouldn't allow him in. But he was an important singer in the Glee Club, and he was an actor. He was an actor, and even at Rutgers, he was an activist. He had already become an activist, really defining what he believed in. And I just want to, but the most important thing people know and remember about Paul Robeson was his baritone bass voice. His voice was the voice of almost a century of Black freedom. And so I want to play his baritone voice just to bring his spirit in the room for all the people who have never heard his voice before. So can you play the first clip, Tyrene? Tyrene's our producer. Shout out to Tyrene.
Sometimes I feel like a motherless child. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child. A long ways from home. A long ways from home. Come, my brother, a long ways from home. A long ways from home. Sometimes
I want to talk about that song because I want to talk about Paul Robeson's mother. Paul Leroy Robeson was born in 1898, and his mother and father were special. His father was born into slavery, and his mother was born into abolition. And his mother was a part of a very famous family in Philadelphia that was a family of Quakers, white Quakers, an African woman was the matriarch, and Native Americans, Laopi Native Americans, all in the Philadelphia area. And this family became so famous for abolition that they wrote the handbooks in Philadelphia for how to be an abolitionist. So his mother was the granddaughter of this famous abolitionist family, and his father was an escaped freedom fighter, a man born into slavery who ventured off and fought for his own freedom. And so this was the home that he was born into. His father was a preacher, but because of this racial tension during the time, he got run off from his church. And thank God for the AME church, because his father then became an AME preacher. And for the rest of Paul Robeson's life, he was AMEZ, which was one of the kind of factions of the AME church, which Frederick Douglass was a part of, Harriet Tubman was a part of, and Paul Robeson was a part of. And so it's just so fascinating, how religion plays into this. And we'll talk about that in a second. I'm going to play a clip where he talks about churches organizing. But his mother actually, I don't know how she became blind, but she was virtually blind, and she died when he was just a young boy in a house fire. And I was just thinking, from an early age, Paul Robeson had to decide who he was going to be. And he decided that he was going to be excellent. Even when he didn't have a mother, he decided he was going to be excellent. So after his mother passed, his father had to take care. There were, I think, 3 boys and a girl in their family. And his father had to take care of it because of racial tension. His father lost his job as a preacher, and they were living in Princeton, New Jersey. They had to live up in Somerville in this, the top of a shop with this man with his children. And still somehow, Paul Robeson became the most famous Black star of the Harlem Renaissance. I mean, before Denzel Washington, before Sidney Poitier, way before Sidney Poitier, the biggest, most prolific global superstar was Paul Robeson. He was the first man to star in a silent film. He was the first man to get top billing. He was the first man to be cast with an all-white cast where he played the lead. He was the first man to get international credentials in his film both across Africa when he played in this, actually a very controversial movie about anti-colonialism. And then he was all across Europe, all the way into Buckingham Palace, where he was celebrated. And then we'll talk about it in a second, across the Soviet Union as well. And so Paul Robeson, when he went, so he graduated from Rutgers with all of these honors, and then he went on to NYU. And like me, actually, NYU was not for me either. Like, he left NYU after 1 year, and he went up to Columbia Law School, and that's where he met the love of his life. And he called her Essie, Eslanda. And Essie was also fine, Vanessa. She was like this, like Harlem, like anthropologist, like she was like a scientist at first. And then she became kind of like Zora Neale Hurston. There was a whole movement of anthropology happening at that time when Zora Neale Hurston was there. Yeah, and so she became that, and she was trying to decode and understand what it meant to be a Black person. And she was one of the earliest thought leaders around what it meant to be Pan-African, what it meant to be in the diaspora. Before Paul Robeson and without Paul Robeson, she traveled all over Africa by herself. And she went to London School of Economics, and she met Jomo Kenyatta, who became the president of Kenya. She knew Kwame Nkrumah, who was the first president of Africa. She went to the Congo. She went to Uganda. She was doing anthropological research on what it means to be a Black civilization across the globe. She was very anti-colonist or colonialism, and definitely Pan-African. And so they met in law school. So you can just imagine how dreamy that is, first of all. This fine man who's in the NFL and going to law school, this world-renowned, awesome economist, anthropologist. Yeah, and he sing like that, like a bell tolling, making all your arms like shiver. You know what I mean? It's just like, it's unbelievable. So they met, they married, they fell in love. And what a lot of people don't know is she was actually his manager. She became the kind of architect of his career. She knew that what he was going to do and be was going to unite the globe around Blackness and freedom, and particularly around Black men. And so she became his business manager, and she put him on. She got him in the movie. She did all sorts of things. So Essie is a really important person in Black history, and I didn't even know her name before I started preparing for this. I'm so grateful for that.
I feel like they were the pre-Ossie Davis and Ruby Dee almost, like in terms of their,
Exactly. And what I think actually was unique about them, though, is that today's theme is radical or responsible. You know, and from the outside, people, I think the one thing people know about Paul Robeson is they know his voice, and they know that he got his passport taken. Do you know about this story or what happened there?
No, I don't.
Oh, okay. So Paul Robeson, so once he, all sorts of things started happening. World War I, World War II, people started coming home from the war. He's representing Black people. He is on the world stage. He's in movies. Everyone loves him. And one of the things that starts happening is he starts traveling internationally. And when he travels internationally, he recognizes that the race issue that caused deep poverty in his childhood, that got his nose broken and his arm dislocated, that made him have to go to law school and the NFL at the same time, that birthed the Harlem Renaissance and the beginning of the civil rights movement, all of in the midst of Jim Crow. He was going to places like London and Spain and all across the Soviet Union, and he was realizing that race was not an issue. And they embraced him for his talent. And he was just like, whoa. And there's a long history of that, with James Baldwin going there, with Josephine Baker going to Europe, the whole Nigritude movement that was happening there in France, where in Europe, Black people felt like they could be liberated and free. So he started talking about it. And he had the biggest voice and the biggest stage and the biggest crushes around the world. And he started talking about freedom and Black liberation. Wow. That didn't fare well for him in America. And he started getting a lot of enemies. And he got on every FBI, every CIA list of watch this man. And so what happened is the Spanish Civil War started happening. And this was the buildup before the Cold War. And the Cold War, you know, was with the Soviet Union. It really was a war of ideas. Are we going to be capitalist and democratic as America, or are we going to be socialist and communist in terms of resources as the UK? And this kind of building up ideas was like, it was called the Cold War, but it really wasn't a war of ideas. There were missiles that were a missile buildup too, but it really wasn't ideas. And so it's like when Kwame Nkrumah, even in Ghana, was saying he's gonna start a new Republic of Ghana, they had to decide if they were going to be capitalist or communist in every single country. So there was this kind of race, this Cold War, to convince people of ideas. Well, you can imagine Paul Robeson came over there. His father just escaped slavery.
Right.
You know what I mean? He's facing Jim Crow America everywhere he goes. He's a 6'3", 219-pound, like I think it was a tight end or something. He a defensive NFL player, dark-skinned, beautiful black man in the middle of Jim Crow. Well, when he started going to the front lines of the Spanish Civil War and all these other places, he started understanding that it wasn't about race; it was about workers and non-workers. His father, the enslaved laborer, and the person who owned him. And so he became pro-labor and he became pro-socialism. And so he started talking about that, and that became a great threat in the beginning of the Cold War. It became a great threat in the beginning of the Cold War. And so what started happening is he started getting blacklisted and blackballed in America. And so he moved to London. He was like, I'm not going to do that. But then he became a bigger star, right? Because they put him in all these international movies. Everybody in America loved him. Everybody across Europe loved him. But the establishment wanted him to be silent. And so something happened really significant where in Georgia, there was a gubernatorial race in Georgia, and it was tight. And this is so beautiful that we're talking about this today at one of the most consequential elections. There was a lynching, Vanessa, in Georgia, where two couples, man, a woman, two married couples were lynched. And they were lynched at, some say, at the suggestion of a very racist man who was running for governor to kind of make a case and to try to rally his base in this very rural part of Georgia. And it was so shocking that these two men and these two women were lynched by a mob in broad daylight, that Paul Robeson spoke out about it. And he went to Truman and he said, you need to create anti-lynching laws, and if you don't protect Black people, we will protect ourselves. And this was pre-militancy, this was pre-anything, and Truman got up and walked out of the meeting. First of all, the fact that Paul Robeson is talking to the leader of the free world lets you know how powerful this man was, right? And so he got up and he was like, I will not talk to you like this, right? And how dare you threaten the president of the United States? And he said, if you do not create anti-lynching laws, which was the beginning of the Civil Rights Act, by the way, he said, we will protect ourselves. And so that made him a target. It made him a target. And so what started to happen at this time already, there's a guy named Joseph McCarthy who was gearing up for something called McCarthyism, or the Red Scare, or not the Red Scare, but I don't remember what it's called, but blacklisting essentially of all the people in Hollywood who espoused anything that seemed communist. So this is 30s, 40s, 50s, right? All of this. And Paul Robeson was number one on that list. And so they brought him to trial. So I want to actually play some of his, there's two clips when he was actually on the floor of the House Un-American Activities Committee. And I want you to hear him defending himself.
Mr. Robeson, would you say that the Negro peoples of the United States are organized or are gathered together or are of a piece?
Can I put it to you this way, that we are very religious people, My father was a part of a church called the African Methodist Episcopal Zion Church. Yes. It numbers about 1 million people across the country. My brother's pastor of one of the largest churches in New York, the Mother Church. It led the struggle for freedom in the time of slavery. It was founded in 1796, something like that. Great heroes of our people came out of our church. We are extremely highly organized, 1 million. Out of 18 million, there are Baptists, 4 million organized. 3 more million organized. We are the most organized people almost on the face of the earth. And we are so organized, that if the Negro people of New York, Michigan, Illinois, and the main populated states of America tomorrow, this week, decide to vote as one unit, if they ask, is Nixon going to help the Negro people most? Do we think he will? Or Kennedy? Whichever way we decide will decide who's president of the United States. That's how organized we are. With that,
I don't know that organized is quite the word I meant.
Okay.
I meant although that ends it, but as of one mind, perhaps.
Well, no, I say, like today, we are of one mind on this. We want our freedom.
Yes.
Let's put it another way. We want to be full citizens, first class, not second class.
I'd like to
We want to go to schools as everybody else. That's right.
Do you see how even he was talking, that's not the clip I was talking about, Tyrene, so it's the next one, but thank you for playing that. Because he was talking about what it looks like to organize from a Black perspective, and she was uncomfortable even with him using the word organize.
First of all, no, the whole clip was a masterclass. First of all, I heard him say, if we're so organized, we're a million. And I got chills, y'all, because I've been listening. And I heard that. And then he stood on his business so tough around their ability to change and influence. And no, I loved that clip.
I loved it too. And his voice is so soothing that he just drew her in, but he was saying the most radical stuff. He was saying the most radical stuff. But what happened after that, V, is he just became under attack. And they actually took his passport from him, him and Essie's passport, so that they could no longer make money. Because they were making nobody would book him in the United States because he was blacklisted, like so many other artists in Hollywood at that time.
And now, it's crazy. No, and now. When we look at what is happening in the world, when we look at the opportunity for us to really move in a radical way, our own heroes are really actually tiptoeing in ways that don't even make no sense, right? And so it's because they're afraid.
I'm so glad, and I'm not afraid. And so that's the conversation I wanted to have today. It's why I have a serious tone, because the question for me that I have for all of you is, what does it actually look like to be radical right now, assuming everybody's going out to vote? And then what does it look like to be responsible right now? And I think this brilliant couple, Essie and Paul Robeson, showed both. And it was actually Paul Robeson who was the responsible one. He was always taking the roles that made Black people look upstanding and dignified, and his wife was like, and I'm gonna meet with Jomo Kenyatta. She was like, and I'm gonna go over here and do this, and they became this power couple. That's why I said it's probably and I was really thinking about, and I do want to, I want you to hear how calm he was in that video, and then over just a course of years, when they took this man's passport, they took his vitality, they took his ability to earn for himself. They planted quotes in the media so that the Black community turned against him. They planted quotes about stuff he said before he even made the speech. Like they circulated quotes about what he said before he would even make a speech. It was classic COINTELPRO. It was classic takedown. And it was with the M15 and with the FBI and CIA all together, like working together. And so I want to play the clip where he's in front of the Un-American Activities Committee, what does it mean to be America in this time where we're even voting right now? Like, what does it mean? And I'm going to give you a little bit of color to that. But if you have something to add to this conversation, please raise your hand. You can raise it by doing *9, pressing *9 on your phone. And like, in what ways do you really need to be a little more radical? And what ways do you need to be a little bit more responsible? And the way that I define those two things is radical means, what are you saying no to? What are you uprooting? And responsible means, what is your ethical responsibility? What is your ethical line that you have to draw, right? So let's listen to him on the
*9.
Talk about that.
Yep.
*9.
*9. Yep.
Yeah, there's two little clips. Yep.
A communist.
I refuse to answer the question.
You refuse to answer.
This is an invasion of my right of secret ballot, Senator Ferguson. If you want to know whether I am, the Communist Party is a legal party, like the Democratic Party, Republican Party. I'm going to vote pretty soon. If you want to send some government official to take my ballot away, a secret ballot, my constitutional right, he can see just what I am.
I see. Have you a communist card in any communist organization, any state, Mr. Robeson?
That is, I consider, a part of the other question that I refuse to answer.
Yeah, I see.
So they were asking him if he's a communist, and he's saying, it is my right as an American to vote the way that I want to, and if you want to send your secret agents into the voting polls with me, then you can do that. But it is my right to vote the way that I want to, and he refused to answer. He and his wife have said that they were not communists on the record in other places, but on the record for this Un-American Activities Committee, they would plead the fifth because they wanted to protect the right of those who wanted to have free thinking, who wanted to be free thinkers. And so play the other one. Now remember how calm he was on that interview we heard about the churches.
In others who might be communists.
Do you know Ben
One
Davis?
of my dearest friends, he is as patriotic an American as can be, and you, gentlemen, are the non-patriots.
Just a minute.
are the un-Americans.
The hearing is now adjourned.
I think it should be.
I've been doing all of this that I can.
Can I read my statement?
No! The meeting is adjourned.
It should be.
What I'm saying is that sounds like a drama. Like
It sounded like a play. It did.
It was on the floor of the House. And I'm just telling you, like, this was the level of bout-itness that our people had to have for the kinds of freedoms that we enjoy today. So I'm just encouraging you, like, please don't sit on the sidelines right now. Please don't sit on the sidelines. When Vanessa and I were thinking about what we might talk about, I had this memory. I had this student, and I won't call his name. He was a 5th grade student in my class, and he was acting out in school. He was from Jamaica. He was acting out. And especially to the white teachers. And they were like, we don't know what to do with him. And they would always send him to my classroom for like a timeout. And, you know, I love little black boys. So it's just like, you all right? Come on and sit down. You was acting bad, but go and sit down over there. And his mom would just like really, really nurture him. And some would say even baby him and make excuses for him. And one time I talked to his mom and I said, well, where's his father? And she said, he's in Jamaica. And I said, what's he doing in Jamaica? And she said, well, he's a revolutionary. He writes for a revolutionary newspaper and he's like starting the revolution in Jamaica. And the irony that this man is being radical in Jamaica and not being responsible in Bridgeport, Connecticut was not lost on me. And I often have thought about him as like the barometer, like, is it better? Is it better for the Black community for us to be radically responsible? Or or do we need to just be radical and uproot things? And so I just wanted to have that conversation. Vanessa, do you have thoughts? And then, I have one last thing, but Vanessa, do you have thoughts?
I have these thoughts, yes, because, and my mind shifts to, I'm just thinking of the artists and creators. I'm not even going to call names right now, but we have such big platforms, and I have been so disappointed with the storytelling. And I have just been like, why aren't people more radical with the opportunity? And I don't mean that the stories have to be slave stories, right? But the stories of like love, the stories of possibility, the stories of like a Black future that is different. And I don't see those now. So, and I'm thinking about that and how disappointed I am. And I am thinking about even us and Girl Trek, and even as we were trying to craft these like stories for this, and there's a balance between what do we think that people are going to want to follow in terms of like on Instagram and is interesting, and like what do we think is authentically like the information that like people need to have and what they want to know. And I'm just thinking about my own self and like how I need to be more radical, because that's where my genuine North Star is.
It is. You're one of the most radical people I've ever met. And I was thinking specifically around my friend Aja. Aja Monet is an incredible Grammy-nominated poet. And actually, you introduced me to her work a long time ago with one of her books. Yeah. And she later became my friend. And I was so
My mother was a freedom fighter is that book. It's and I really love it. Yeah.
It's Aja's book. Yeah, she has many books and she has a new CD out. She's great. Please support Aja. She's actually going through a tough time right now because she has been radical and she has been brave and she has spoken up when other people didn't speak up. And it is an unpopular opinion that she has. And we have spent the last 10 weeks talking about going out and voting. So I believe you got to vote. That's my personal position and that's my platform as the leader of this organization. And I see, honor, and respect Aja's position. Aja is a freedom fighter, and Aja has taken note of the mass casualties around the world in places like the Congo, in places like North Carolina with no aid from the hurricane, and in places like Palestine where people are suffering and children are dying. And so she is on her platform crying, like my friend is crying, and she's pleading people. There is no pathway forward that does not talk about people dying. And I cannot endorse any pathway that does not make eye contact with that. And I was convicted, and I was like, I know, but I said, we got to get people to vote. You know what I'm saying? She had her position. I had my position. Vanessa got her position. Everybody got their position. And the point is, right now, we've made our position. And again, I'm hoping that you do go out and vote. The point of it is if we are too scared or too responsible to be radical, the systems that were designed to keep us oppressed will continue to keep us oppressed. And so I am inspired by the story of Paul Robeson. I am inspired by people who
Can I say
find the balance
something though there,
between the
Morgan?
two. Yeah,
Can
please.
I say something? Because this is even for the women. I know we're going to bring in voices now, because I actually think in this scenario on this day, right? Morally, it's easy for me to stand behind you and be like that because I know I'm going to vote. But it's actually in the other places by which I could vote with my dollar, vote with my time, vote with my energy, like where I radically don't want to let go of stuff or don't want to, or I'm just like, no, I got to play my position. Like I'm just.
No, case in point, we are both on iPhones, and iPhones right now are complicit.
I need to get my iPhone up. It's crazy you said this because I saw this Motorola Flip commercial and I was like, why am I insistent I happen to have this iPhone? Like, I don't even know. Have I even explored the possibility? And I was just like, we're so brainwashed. Like, I just felt that about myself. I was just like, I had my best professor ever, the best teacher I've ever had. His name was Peter Sellers at UCLA. He was an opera teacher, and he taught 2 classes, art as a moral action and art as a social action. And one time he pulled me to the side and he literally said, are you going to live your life by default or are you going to make active choices? And I just was like, it always stuck with me. Like, I don't want to be in default mode, but I have personally been evaluating, like, where I got to check myself. I am in default mode, like default mode around my attitude, default mode around my bitterness, default mode around my expectations, default mode around my complaints, default fucking mode around the way I'm consumerism and shopping, media and everything. And that's why I really felt like I was like, I got to get off social media. I have to radically actually use this 21 days to ask myself, am I awake? Because the revolution ain't going to be televised, and stuff is really happening right now in the streets of our neighborhoods, and I wanted to be present for it.
I'm glad that you are called to action. And Paul Robeson didn't start off as a radical. He started off as radically obedient and trying to be excellent within a system that said he was not. And it was actually his wife and the conditions of the time that radicalized him. And so I'm saying, I'm saying that the conditions of our time now are going to require that we do both well, that we know how to play the game in the systems. And that, and by the way, I think maybe Motorola I think it's just cell phones. I don't know. I got to do more research. Talking about the Congo. Yeah. Just saying, I ain't trying to call out.
No, and we ain't, look, and we need phones. No, this is my point. That's what I'm trying to say, Morgan. It's like, it's mainly the supremacy to me in my own mind that I don't even consider there are other options in certain categories of my life, that I am just like, what about something else? And like, why am I so conditioned?
No, that beautiful man that came over to give me a massage yesterday was like, we were talking and he was just like, listen, the world is breaking into 2 parts, people who are going to go offline and who are going to be their own intelligence and who are going to connect through barter in real life, and then people who go into the artificial intelligence and who go into this systems approach, and where everything is so prescribed and even your thoughts are prescribed. And I was just like, yeah, but maybe if there's a middle ground. I was like, I don't want to join your commune servant. Don't stop blinking at me like that. But if you have something to say to add to this conversation, *9. I think we might have some callers on B. You were going to say one. I think you were going to finish your thought.
No, my thoughts finished, y'all. I'm asking myself, I am just like, where today do I actually need to be responsible? And you are right. And where do I need, like, there are, y'all, I know how to.
It is a really beautiful balance.
I'd be pulling it together. I'd be like, hey, y'all, what's up?
Because don't be that man who don't take care of his kids, who's all up in Jamaica writing the newspaper.
No, I can't.
But also we have to honor the strides that we came before us, and we can't lose ground either. So we do have to be responsible, but we also have to be radical. I want to finish up.
Do we as women have to hold those men accountable? I mean, I know this is a little bit of a detour, but is that part of our role? Is that
part of being radical? Yeah, I think it is. I think I think it is being responsible, not placating, first of all, their responsibilities to be providers, but then also calling them to action and having like real consequences around it. I don't know. What do I know? I don't know. I don't got no kids. I don't got no man in Jamaica. Right. So I don't know. But I just want to finish up Paul Robeson's story because it actually, I hope he has a granddaughter who's alive who's been really writing his story. I hope she's on the line today. We often get people who are the descendants of the people we talk to on the line. If you are, sister, I think her name is Susan, like, please *9. Remember John Coltrane's daughter was on the line? I mean, we never know.
Yeah.
So please *9. And then,
Donna Summer, was it Donna Summer or somebody else's?
Yes. Yeah, she was like, Donna, you're scoring the block with us. Yeah, I remember. But so please hit *9 if you're on with us. Any members of the Robeson family. There's some that are still living. Correct the record, please. Anybody on the line. But what happened with Paul Robeson was actually something for us to know and learn from. The stress of being surveilled, the stress of being followed, the economic stress of being blackballed, losing everything he had, coming back, losing everything he had again, coming back, the stress on his life and his wife is one reason. Paul Robeson had deep physical and mental illness that came in his last 15, 20 years of life. And he was in Europe because he didn't feel safe in America. Like literally, he didn't feel safe. This was civil rights movement right after Jim Crow. He just didn't feel safe, and he wanted to come back for the civil rights movement. But even the Black, respectable, responsible civil rights leaders were afraid to be too close to him because people thought he was a communist. And so he just was living in Europe, and he went to an affair, and after the affair, he had just like a mental breakdown in his room, and he tried to commit suicide, and he didn't succeed. And 3 days later, he tried to commit suicide again, and he didn't succeed. And he tried a third time, and he was put into an asylum, and he was given electroshock therapy. And a lot of people say that he was at that affair that he went to the night before, that he was drugged with LSD and this kind of counterintelligence, like numb his brilliant mind. And so that's what a lot of members of his family believe happened to him. And he never recovered. And so he died he lived in obscurity, kind of. He lived actually on Edgecombe, so he wasn't in obscurity. You remember Edgecombe? You did that episode on Edgecombe in Harlem? Yeah. He lived there with his son, Paul Robeson Jr., and he passed away. He passed away in his 70s, I believe. And so it's real out here. I mean, even the fact that I was nervous even to say Aja's name because she's so radical. Do you understand what I mean? Like, and I'm radical, you're radical. We have so many people who are rooting for us, so many people who are supporting us. And our mission is so not threatening. We just want to live.
Right.
Like, we just want Black women to live as long as everyone else. But it is the sheer power that we have. But I think we have to practice a little more fearlessness, Vanessa, and I'm inspired by the stories of Black history, and it's why I love Black History Bootcamp. So I'm encouraging everybody out there to go out and vote and to be fearless in what they do after the election. Let's hear from 2 or 3 of our members, and then we'll wrap it up. Anybody on the line?
Greetings.
Yes, greetings. Please say your name.
Hear me?
Yes, if you're comfortable, say your name. Okay.
For real. I really have enjoyed listening to what I've been hearing. I would like to, one of the things that I do with the language, I think language can lead us into places that we don't expect. For instance, blacklisted, I call it whitelisted, because the blacklisted puts the onus on us in a way that the black is not okay. And what he did was to be very clear in and about his blackness, in my opinion, so that he could define who he was in accordance, I might add, to the Kwanzaa principles. And we're called to, I love the radically responsible. We're called to be radically responsible. Do we need to learn to be team players? That's a value. That's a quality that we have to share. We have to teach each other and our children. How do you succeed on a team or in a team or through a team that has defined you as incapable of creating your own team, like what happened with Black, they call them the colored, the Colored Baseball League. And they decided, and many of our relatives decided, that rather than be a slave at whatever stage of development we were, I'll be buried in my grave. And that could mean forfeiting a $100,000 job. It can be anything. My child might not be the child of the year in a Black school, but sometimes we have to look at it. I came through the era of segregation into desegregation, never to be integration, quiet as is kept. And we just have to bring the past to the present and the present to the past. And all I can say, without going too far off course or the time frame, is we have to be clear. We have to be clear. Otherwise, it'll be like my former Black supervisor asked me. She didn't ask me. She said, "You're not a team player." And I asked, "Where's the team? What are the rules? And what are the plays?" I'm at Harvard University Medical School to share my talents, not to prove how close I can get to the powers that be, that I can redefine what it means to be Black and powerful. And today, what does it mean to be Black and radically responsible? After the election, even more essential than now, the election day is important. Of greater importance is our holding those who we hope will get into office accountable, our being clear about what it is we want, and our being ready to work and make a few sacrifices to make it happen. Ashe.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
Ashe.
Ashe. Yes. I'm gonna go back and listen to his recording. Yes.
Yes. And I feel like Dr. Is she still on the line? What was her name again? I know it was Dr. Oh, she may not still be there. I'm
Nicole
Dr.
Crooks'
Jacqueline. Oh, hi,
yes.
Nicole Crooks' mother, Dr. Jacqueline. What I loved about what you said just now, Dr. Jacqueline, is you knitted together our conversation yesterday, fist in the air or hand extended. You were like, it's wherever the team is. You know what I mean? It's like, can we be a team player? And yeah, I would love to greet everybody if we're on the same team. I would love to be loving and compassionate. And then today, like, let's find the team, get the team on the bus, and then let's figure out how to be radically responsible together, particularly after this election. What does it look like? What does it look like to uproot the systems that do not serve us and to be responsible and diligent in creating new systems that do, or remediating those systems and demanding and insisting on the rights that we deserve? And what does that look like, and how can we practice fearlessness around that? And so I'm so inspired by our people. Let's take one. Thank you so much, Dr. Jacqueline. Let's take 2 more callers. Do we have anybody on the line? Would love to hear your voice.
I'm inspired by how many mothers and daughters walk with us. I just want to say this. It is an absolute theme that women call and say either their mother is listening or their daughter is listening also, and they are not even in the same place.
I know, and you brought my sister and her daughter to the rally. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Do we have another caller? If you're comfortable, say your name and where you're from.
Hi, Vanessa. Hi, Morgan. Hi to everyone on the call. This is Joanna calling from Atlanta. I can't tell you how moved I am by this particular segment today. You know, when we talk about being responsible and being radical and finding the balance between using both, to the doctor that just spoke earlier, you know, that means finding that balance. This is a perfect segue to my scenario, being a team player. And I found myself this past week, you know, as the elections are coming, everybody, you know, in a corporate space is talking about it without talking about it. It's like, oh, I can't wait till this election is over. my text messages are blowing up, my emails, blah, blah, blah. And so I'm at a corporate event. We're all having dinner. The GM is at the table, and he mentions, you know, this dialogue between Joe Rogan and Donald Trump. And it opened up Pandora's box as just kind of some insight. I'm probably the only person that fits into the Democratic Party of my entire group. I am the only female, and I am the only Black. And so as, you know, that initiation of this conversation starts, please know, as a person who I like to consider myself being responsible, I'm also a people pleaser, and I'm trying to be able to, I don't know the word, to placate into the space so that I am not being ostracized in any kind of way. But the conversation took off with the first lead-in to Donald Trump and winning the election. And then I just said, you know, hey, you guys, I'm so sorry. I realize that this is a very challenging time for everyone. And, you know, the stakes are high and our country is in uproar. But do you guys really think this is the platform to have this conversation? Because if it is, I just want you all to be aware that I have some 2 cents that I'd like to be able to add into it. And so from that point, you know, everyone was like, yeah, you know.
Come on, girl, come on.
Right.
Why you speaking up like that at the job?
I was gonna say, drop the people pleasing from your language. It was an understanding you had about who you were, and then you was like, but not today, not today.
But please know the fear that came behind that, and I do, you know, I think radicalization. There's fear there. There's a fear in, you know, in facing, you know, what your beliefs are and what you stand for, and you know, to sit there and see where this dialogue could potentially, where it could go. I'm like, no, we're not having that. We're not doing that today. And so I just say, you know, while I respect everyone's voice, I respect everyone's, you know, regardless of what views that I may have as it relates to this election. Hey, if we can't do it and being in the workplace is truly not the place for it, let's be responsible. That is the responsible thing, is to, you know, let's mute the conversation before it even begins. And that really was hard for me because that was a GM that brought it up. And I think that he felt comfortable doing it because of the power of his role. And that pissed me off.
Yes. Well, listen,
so I just wanted to
I'm proud of you. Yeah, I'm proud of you for your own deep self-reflection. I think all of us could find ways to speak truth to power in more meaningful ways. And it doesn't have to mean that it isn't a loving way, by the way. But it's, I mean, we, even from yesterday's conversation, we had to like think through as a team, like, do we want to call out these big lobbyists? Do we want to talk about, you know, all of these different companies who have routinely caused suffering in our communities? And then how do we talk about politics as a 501c3? And we are yoked in so many ways. And it's like, every single day you wake up and you have to, if radicals on one side of the room and responsibles on the other side of the room, you got to figure out where you're going to stand given what is required of you. One of the organizers just texted me, Jesus was radical. Yeah, Jesus was radical, but Jesus also was washing feet and doing the things every day that needed to be done. And so every day you have to ask yourself, where on this spectrum am I going to be? So it isn't an either or, it is definitely a balance and an and. So let's take one last caller and then we will play us out for today. You guys be safe out there on the polls. Thank you for joining us. Spread the word. Day 3 is tomorrow. It's going to be a juicy conversation just like today. Invite your friends. That is a responsible thing to do. Invite your friend, because we need to start having these conversations over the month of November so we can plan together, learn together. Last caller, say your name, where you are from.
My name is Beverly. I'm on Amelia Island in American Beach, a Black resort that was founded in 1935 in the midst of segregation to provide rest and relaxation without humiliation for Black folks who could not go to beaches. And I
need to be on the Chamber of Commerce. You need to be on the Chamber of Commerce. That was a good commercial for Amelia Island. I was just there. They had that really pretty dune. Yeah, I was just there. They had like some dunes at this black woman.
American Beach.
Yes. I was walking there.
Yes.
Yay.
Yes. And I just want to say, I understand that many people see voting today or not voting because it's kind of the lesser of two evils for them in terms of not being happy with either choice. But I'd like to make a plea that we're in a democratic society and voting is our opportunity within the system to make a change so that the person in there is more likely to then uphold what we expect from our country, not just for Black folks, but for all of its citizens, regardless of ethnicity or where they come from or how they got here. So
thank you so much for that. Yes, thank you for that words of wisdom. Yes,
as not a sellout to vote, but selling in so that your vote will have an impact on where this country goes. So thank you.
Yeah, that is, it is I appreciate that. And I think in that scenario where I was saying you have to get up and figure out what side of the bed you're going to stand on, like most of us who woke up today was like, I'm going to have to stand on the side of responsible because we saw Fannie Lou Hamer's face on Instagram. And we were like, we got to stand on that side of responsible on today. And maybe tomorrow we're radical, but like today we have to be responsible. And I get that. And even I had a conversation with a good friend who is just a powerful woman, does so much good for the world. And she is Arab American. And she was saying that it is going to be so hard to go into the voting booth, but I have to do it. She was like, I have to do it, but it's so hard, like morally hard for me. And I
it's like we have to
that
be
as
comfortable
well.
being uncomfortable.
We do, all of us at all times, but we also have to have a vision for our world, and we have to have a pathway and a blueprint for said vision. Paul Robeson and Essie were not just moving. They had met with world leaders. They had been a part of coalitions. They understood the blueprint. They understood where they were going, and they were making calculated yet radical decisions about their lives. They had a child, they had a family. You understand what I mean? They were making smart decisions about their lives. And that's what we are all trying to do here today. So we hope that everybody gets out and votes. We hope that you come away with a conviction on what we do next. And I hope you come back tomorrow for the conversation. Thank you all. Thank you to our co-host today who came on to talk to us. Vanessa, thank you so much. We're going to close out with the voice of Paul Robeson. And we're going to play one of his most famous songs. And I want you to bring to mind your mother's generation and the kind of radical responsibility that she was called to, even if she wasn't able to do it. And then think of your grandmother's generation. My mother desegregated her school in 1955. My grandmother was a sharecropper. And so thinking about how she had to go to that man and negotiate her prices, she and her husband, so she could feed her children. So just like think about each generation, think about your great grandmother's kind of radical responsibility and what she had to do and what she wanted to do. And I want to leave with Paul Robeson, and he was singing Old Man River. And it was interesting because the kind of Harlem elite didn't like him playing this role. They thought it was like stereotypically Black, but this is a man who went to law school at Columbia and was valedictorian. He was a wise person, and he understood how radical it was for our ancestors to be able to survive that kind of exploitative labor and the kinds of mindsets that they needed to have in order to do it, the kind of philosophical debates that they had to make, and the kinds of I could cry, like the kinds of like compromises that they had to make in order to get us to where we are right now, where we get to live, we get to be artists, we get to be revolutionaries, we get to be free. We get to live wherever we want in the world. And so I wanted to honor the people who came before us with this song and hear his beautiful voice. Take care, everyone. Be well, be. Bye, y'all.